morning, everybody. Children's Librarian Alicia here today on another, Friday? And today I was feeling particularly librarian-y. So the books that I'm going to recommend today, which you can read at home online, are all books about reading. And before we get started, I just wanted to mention that starting next week, these videos, I'm going to post them a bit less. I'm just going to post them on Mondays. So we'll have videos once a week instead of every day of the week. And remember, in the meantime, on our website, we have a page called our Schools Out Survival Guide, which you can visit at nwpl.ca/youth/schools out. And on that page, we keep adding more stuff, so if you haven't had a look at it for a little while, go back and have a look, because we have lists of authors who are doing readings online for kids of their books, other places where you can get free books right now during this time, a whole list of educational resources that you can use with fun and educational activities for kids, and some other things like safe websites with games and things like that to keep yourselves occupied. All right, so with that out of the way, we're going to start with a good old librarian joke, which goes like this. Why did the librarian slip and fall on the library floor? Because she was in the non-friction section. So, our first book today is a picture book, and it is called Just Read by Lori Degman. Just Read, I love it. And you can read this book on Freeding, so just read it without any waiting list at all. And this is a colorful, brand new picture book that was just published this year. And it features an exciting parade of kids who are reading whenever and wherever they can, including reading music, reading Braille, reading the signs on the road, reading together, and more. And it's written in rhyme, which makes it really fun to read out loud. And there are lots of little details in the pictures that will keep you coming back for more. And I like this book particularly because it includes reading and storytelling in all of its forms. So not just, so often I run into sort of a narrow idea of what reading is. So it's nice to see a more inclusive definition in this book of what reading is. There's even kids reading using sign language in the book, for example. On to our next recommendation, which is called Book, Uncle and Me by Uma Krishnaswamy. And you can read this one on Library to Go. And this is a story about a girl named Yasmin who's 9 years old, and every day she borrows a book from Book Uncle, who's a retired teacher who has set up a free sort of lending library book stand right outside her apartment building. One day, though, the mayor tries to shut down the book stand. And Yasmin has to do something when this happens. She realizes she has to step up and do something about this. So she musters her friends, her family, her neighbors, and they launch a campaign to save the book stand, save Book Uncle's book stand. And this is an empowering story for kids who need to hear that they can advocate for the things that are important to them, and that just because they're kids doesn't mean they can't affect change and have their voices heard. So I really like that message in this book. It's empowering, and it's about books and reading, so of course I love it. Our third book is actually a nonfiction picture book called The Librarian of Basra by Jeanette Winter. And you can read and listen to this book on Tumble Books. And this is a picture book that tells the true story of Alicia Muhammad Baker, who was the chief librarian at the Library of Basra during the invasion of Iraq. And when she figured that war was coming, she moved 30,000 books out of the library and into a nearby restaurant, and then eventually into the homes of her friends and her own home to protect them. And it was a good thing that she did, because 9 days later, after doing that, the library burned down. So she and her friends sort of single-handedly saved all of these books, despite not getting any help from her government. They took care of the books until the fighting moved on. And it's a very simple retelling of a story that was first reported in 2003. And there are a lot of details that are left out of the book. For example, it doesn't mention who is invading Iraq at the time. It makes no mention of that. But it is a good introduction of sort of an everyday hero for young kids. And it strikes a balance between describing war and the consequences of war without it being too frightening for much younger kids. Our last book is a chapter book, and this one is for older kids, called Word Nerd by Susan Nielsen. We have it available on Library to Go, and this is a story about a 12-year-old boy named Ambrose who describes himself as a friendless nerd. He has a hard time finding his place. And him and his mom move around a lot, so that makes it even harder for him to fit in. However, one day, he strikes up an unlikely friendship with his landlord's adult son, whose name is Cosmo, and he is freshly out of jail for breaking and entering. But they realize, Ambrose and Cosmo, they realize that they both love Scrabble, and Ambrose convinces Cosmo to take him to the local competitive Scrabble club. And that opens up a whole new world for Ambrose. The people at the Scrabble club are some of the first people to accept him and embrace him for who he is, and he really starts to blossom. And Cosmo grows too, as he tries to impress the Scrabble club's leader, Amanda. And so this book it's a funny and unique look at fitting in and finding your people, finding the people who support and accept you. And Susan Nielsen has written a ton of great books for preteen and teen readers, and this is definitely one of them. And I do recommend all of her books. She's a great author, and she's also Canadian, so get your Canadian content in with this one. Our activity idea for today is to tell your own story or make your own book. There's a link in the description to a website that has some good suggestions for ways to write a book written by your kids or to work together to write a book, as well as a link to some websites recommended by Scholastic where kids can create their own stories online. You can get writing, but there's also, I want to recommend a fun activity that you can do just at home sitting around in a few minutes. That's really fun. So if you have 3 or more people, it works best. And you sit in a circle, and each of you have a piece of paper and a pencil. And each person writes one line on the top of the page to start the story. Then you pass it along to the next person, and they write the next line of the story. Now here comes the fun part, because when you pass the paper along next time, you fold down the first line so that it's hidden. So you fold it back so that all the next person can see is the line you just wrote. And then they have to continue the story not knowing how it started. So you keep going with everyone writing a line and then folding the paper down and passing it along until you've filled up the whole page, and then you unfold it and you see what kind of crazy story you've come up with. You can also do a version of this orally as well, just going around in a circle and each person saying one sentence as you go around the circle to build your story. Some kids, I know I've even done it just with like one word at a time, but that gets crazy really quick. So I like doing it just like with a sentence at a time and building the story as you go around. So give that a try, get storytelling, get writing, and we will see you next week. Bye.